Carol, Talbot, thank you so much for jumping onto this podcast, Questioning Reality.
Sounds fantastic, and questioning reality is what I'm all about, as you well know.
So, all right, well, let's start with that. What is it about reality? What is it that stemmed? Where did it stem from for you to start questioning reality?
I think I've always been one of those people who, I love learning. Yeah. I really love learning. However, if you think about who we are, from the moment we're born, we're given a name, placed into a religion, sent to school, taught a history that may or may not be true, and then we're tested on that history. And if we get it right, we're the star of the class, and if we're not, we're the kind of dunce of the class, and that pattern can stay with you throughout your life. So it seemed to me that our paradigm just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. The wings are clipped. And also, as an avid learner, as an avid reader, when I read books like, you've probably read The Lives of the Masters of the Far East. It's a set of 6 books by Baird T. Spalding, and they were written in the late 1800s. And what happened was there was about 11 researchers, scientists, went off to the Himalayas to see if they could meet the masters of the Far East. And indeed they did. They met masters who could walk on water. They witnessed this, that could manifest banquets and feasts out of thin air, that could be in 2 places literally within seconds of each other, like 2 different countries. And so if you've read books like that, for me, the question is that just for the masters? Or do we have the ability, do we have the human potential to do that? And I believe that we do, and that we've just been, our DNA is distorted for sure. And so that's the reason that I like to push the boundaries of what's possible. And the reason that I run things like firewalking, where, people say, oh, Carol, that's a rah-rah event. Yes, it is. It's very motivational. But, they estimate that by the age of about 30, we're kind of hardwired in how we operate, what emotions, what language, what behavior. In other words, you're operating from a set menu. So the question is, how do you ever learn anything new? So when you do those kind of like off the beaten track experiences, then it creates new neurological connections very, very quickly. And again, allows you to question reality. If I can do that, then if I'm unwell, maybe I could heal myself. If I'm having a little bit of a tough time in business, maybe I could turn that around. So it gets you back to where we started, questioning reality itself.
Beautiful. I've been on these woo-woo exercises, and Tony Robbins, is the master at the old firewalking. I remember doing that in 2016, and it was frightening, and I needed to question reality because I saw where my life was going. And I remember drawing, the circle of life, and the 7 areas of your life, and you draw a little symbol of where you are, and mine literally looked like a toxic waste sign. I mean, I looked at it and went like, wow, my life is a toxic
like
waste
instead
sign.
Of a wheel, it's a very bumpy ride.
It was like one bit high and then a little bit, like the toxic waste symbol. And I thought, well, this is a good time to start questioning my reality, because I'm not going in the direction that I know is bringing me joy or happiness. And I think there's a lot of people who are stuck in that place. But as you said, we get to a place, maybe around 30, and, we start to solidify all of our beliefs and our values. And, the brain, has evolved over time to be in a fearful state, for a lot of people, and it wants to know what's going on. We're then hardwired to be within our habits, and our habits then dictate our life, and that's the beautiful thing about questioning reality, because then you suddenly realize that
I've been here before.
It's like deja vu. But it's then you're able to break the limitations, break through the mold of the conditioning of what your family has taught you. And I was thinking about it before, when you're abused, is it okay to then abuse others? Because, I was thinking about it, families do it, of course. And when I first came into my family with Julia, who already had 2 boys, we were in a bit of time when I moved to Dubai. I was already kind of playing out an old pattern of winding the oldest one up a little bit, teasing, kind of in a fun way, because that's what I got when I grew up, my brother and my dad and just all of us siblings together. But it was abuse. And it's hard to discern it because you just think, oh, come on, I'm just pulling his leg, but he's not happy with me doing it. And Julia thankfully made me aware of it. And I was like, wow, even if it feels something so innocent, it is still passing down that abuse. Just like they do in fraternities, when they're in the younger kids, and you have the older kids giving them a hard time, and when they become older, then they give the younger kids. And we make it feel like it's okay to do that. And I'm just, observing how that abuse can carry on. If you're not questioning reality, we're just doing the same thing over and over and passing it down. So for you, what was it that made you want to question your reality?
I've been very blessed, Alex. When I hear so many people have trauma or a bad childhood or have been abused, I had great parents.
Yeah.
Now, my brother, and we were, only 18 months apart, he was bullied. Not at home, but he was bullied at school. And at that time, my parents really didn't know how to handle my brother getting a little aggressive and violent. So I actually only became aware of that several years ago when I wondered why my brother would be quite angry at times. So I was really shocked because I used to always speak about our great childhood.
Yeah.
And I still, I had a great childhood. I had great parents. But that desire to learn more probably stemmed from my mother, who, did what she was meant to do, but she'd often travel up to London, change into sort of different clothes, and she'd be studying philosophy on Gurdjieff, Uspensky, and things like that.
Wow.
And even more recently, my mother had shared with me a couple of years ago that my grandfather, her father, was very interested in Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, So it seems to have been, when you talk about coming down the families, a family line of interest. And my mum used to take me to all sorts of events and things, which, to be honest with you, Alex, a lot of it scared me.
Yeah.
And so this comes round to the darkroom because I always slept with a night light. I was very scared of the dark, and I was sort of scared of all those things. Yet as a young child, I had those wonderful dreams where you're flying and things. And as you get older, those get shut down, sadly. I know I've reactivated them a little bit more recently, which is great. So I guess all of that led me to always being a seeker, searcher, explorer. So I spent a lot of money on my own personal development because in the field of learning and development, my model of the world is if I'm not learning and developing myself, I'm not being authentic when I'm training and teaching groups of people. So I've always sent myself on different programs. Every year I used to have which programs, whether it was all of Tony Robbins, 20 years ago, or Jack Canfield.
Yeah.
But there was a time, I think it was probably about 12, 13 years ago, where I looked at my notes after 1 year going back and forth to the west coast of the States with quite a well-known personal development trainer and teacher. And I hadn't taken any notes. Because I wasn't receiving anything that I wasn't already aware of in the field of neurolinguistic programming, which I've been for a long, long time. And I thought, my head is full. And so that was a little key that maybe I needed to go on some different experiences. So I went on different experiences. One of them was into the heart and lungs of the world in Ecuador, not realizing at the time that that was a life changer, not even realizing afterwards that it would take me in different directions. So if I look back and you say, where did it all start? I'd say, from my upbringing and being surrounded by a mother and parents who were open to learning and gave me a lot of freedom to explore, and just that desire in me to always learn and question reality.
Because you had such a beautiful upbringing, because a lot of people, in a way, it can be a limitation, right? Because if everything's great, then what is there to question? You had a nice bubble, you've been, blessed. This need to question reality, what was the purpose of it? I mean, if everything's great, a lot of people come out of pain, and for me, it was like, I need to question this because I'm heading in the wrong direction. I'm sabotaging my own happiness. I'm not happy. All of these different things were happening. I didn't feel like I had any control over myself. It was like I was sharing my space with something that was trying to hurt me or cause me pain and mischief. And but when you're in a state where you are, blessed and happy and doing it, was it just the fact it was passed down for you to start questioning reality based on what your mum was doing? And of course, you resonate with your mother, and you looked up to her. What is it? Where are you going with that? What your search is,
Great question, because I feel this is the natural human desire that should be ignited in every human being. And we see so many people today having that kind of like spiritual desire, spiritual urge, because they know we are not just this physical form, that we need to start being aware of our multidimensionality, and that we are not alone, and that we have many realities that we also play in. And so I feel it's this natural urge, and in many people, we get attracted by what's going on in the outside world, which, going back to, you're given a name, you're placed into a religion, you're sent to school, taught a history that may or may not be true. Everything becomes narrowed down, and we get attracted and attached to our outer world rather than the inner desire. So maybe I'm lucky that I've always had that little spark that says there's more. And that drive, not just for me to be more than I believed I could be, also to help others be more than they believe themselves to be, and literally open the door to new possibilities. So I feel that's an intrinsic desire that is suppressed in many individuals, and I'm sure you're the same. You see it really kicking in this day and age, when with many of my clients, they know there's something more, and this evolution that we're in, so this is where science and spirituality should never have been separated. So for example, science believes that consciousness is in the brain, in the physical brain. And that would mean that when we transition, when we pass over, if the physical brain dies, then so do you and your consciousness. So it doesn't acknowledge the eternal beings that we are. And ultimately, we are eternal, but in this lifetime, we've been made finite. So if you think about many religions, many people believe in reincarnation. And if you think about that, and they do past life regression and all that, and if you do believe in reincarnation or have been to any of those past life regressions, you've heard that you have had thousands and thousands of lives. And I question that reality, because if you've had thousands of lives here, then how is that evolution? To me, especially when you reincarnate and then down comes the veil of forgetting, although there are some people who come back with recall of other lifetimes, not just in this reality, but in other realities, then, how to me is that evolution? If we're here to grow, and the natural desire is to expand, to grow, to evolve, to be more than you thought you could be, how is that evolution? To me, that means we're on a prison planet. We're living a life, and then, poof, you bounce back in. And so to me, the true path of ascension, because most of the ascension gateways are compromised, is to look within. And that's the journey that many people find challenging these days, because we're encouraged to look without.
I love that. I've got a couple of questions from that. And it makes me want to go to the first one, which was, you said it's about evolution, and how can it be? I'm just going to try to see if I can look at and argue for those who believe in reincarnation.
I'm not saying reincarnation doesn't happen. It does. I'm just questioning it as an evolutionary growth path when you do not come back with full recall.
Yes.
And also because our original Tyrannusium 2 experiment design, the true human design, was to evolve in one lifetime.
Could it be that, the reason that they have come back again is so that they can have their experience now and compare it to the one before, to then find out where was the evolution from that point? Because to have two different lives and come together and to be able to then discern would be quite a skill or an experience that only they could ever really ever be able to share the story of, and they could tell the evolution of what it was that from that place to this place. Does it make it a prison if you come back from a place before? And as you said before, it might be a reincarnation from maybe another planet, you know? Where did the prison planets come from?
Well, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
It's just an idea in terms of, if you're coming back and forgetting everything you learned from other realities and space-time realities and matrices, then how is that evolution? And how do we get out of that hamster wheel? How do we get out of that loop? And also to become more aware of, as I said, our multidimensionality. We have many other probabilities living in different realities, many different incarnates. We have the soul level, the spirit level, the oversoul, the rishi levels, and to embody more of who we are. So I'm not suggesting for people who do believe in reincarnation that it doesn't happen. It does. I'm just questioning that reality as an evolutionary path. That's all.
I love that.
And so for me, when I come across new information, particularly information that resonates with me, I always think, is this new information or is it an echo of what I already know? Is it like there's a zip file there that is tickled when you read the book, read the movie, or come across new information that, again, opens the door to new possibilities and realities?
I think Socrates said it, that learning is remembering.
Yes.
And it feels like that. You know, when you hear something, and look, somebody might be watching this right now and never heard anything like this before, but they feel it's true. And though science might say, no, it's not true because, you know, we haven't proved this and your consciousness dies and when you die and, you know, yada, yada, yada. Because how does anybody really truly know? Actually, how do you know that we are eternal?
I'll go into that. But again, I was just going to go back to when people are listening and something resonates with them or not. You know, also, you know, let's say that's your path, you're a hypnotic regression therapist.
Yeah.
Then you're going to likely reject that information because it impacts your career. And so when people hear information that is so different from their own model of the world, you know this, they go into what we call cognitive dissonance. It's like thanks, but no thanks. And yet, you know, you look back and over your own evolution and becoming aware of your own behavior, your own patterns, and how maybe you weren't aware that you were using those patterns with other people. You know, so, you know, thank goodness we do learn, grow, and things that were initially, you know, closed doors, then the door opens and you start to, you know, I look back and think, oh my God, Carol, duh. You know, how could I have said that? How could I be doing that? And yet, you know, rather than beat myself up, and maybe you do this as well, rather than beat myself up about some of the, you know, things I've said and other things I've done where I'm not so proud, I look and say, that's who I was then. And that's okay. Because we are about
evolving and growing
and expansion.
Well, you know, I've mentioned this before on the podcast that, you know, there is the old self and then there is the new self. There is a becoming, you know, like past life, you know, you've learned from your past life and you're now in this life, or you're just learning from your past. I mean, you know, we call it past life. You can call it reincarnation. I guess we're reincarnating all the time in our current life because we're evolving. So you've been on this journey and it's led you up to recently stepping into the dark room. Can you just tell us how this came about and what drew you into the dark?
Well, it was an experience that I had already booked for March 2020, and it got cancelled the week before. And I was really prepared because it wasn't just a darkroom experience. It was also about source feeding. Some people will refer to source feeding as breatharian as well, to switch the body template from being fueled by food and drink to being fueled by prana, by chi, by energy, cosmic energy. So I've been following Jasmine for some time. She's probably one of the well-known people who are source-fed or breatharians because she's been without the need for food
Right.
for over 30 years. Now, when I say without the need, it doesn't mean that she doesn't need or that she doesn't take food occasionally. She doesn't need it. She fuels her system in a different way. So the metaphor that I usually give for that, because people go, what? And again, this is where you get cognitive dissonance,
Right.
because it's so far removed. And, you know, a lot of our reality and socialization is based around good food and drink, and obviously the New Earth Cafe and things.
We don't encourage breatharian here at the New Earth.
And there's different levels, you know, some eat once a week, some eat every day, a little, or just juice.
Yeah.
You know, there's different levels. So again, it was about questioning reality. But Jazz Maheen runs her sessions in the Darkroom at Mantak Chia's place in North Thailand, in Chiang Mai. And, you know, when I speak to people, they go, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Because I didn't realize how many people are afraid of the dark. And I shared with you, I was actually afraid of the dark till I was probably about, well, I'm not going to share my age, but probably till about 14 years ago, I always slept with a nightlight, always. That can also impact your quality of sleep, by the way. And then, I don't know, when I moved into my current property, I never needed a nightlight. It was always fine. So that didn't really scare me. And my question to many people is, you know, if you are afraid of the dark, are you really afraid of the dark, or are you afraid of looking within? Now, a little caveat here. When we talk about, as we did, trauma, people who've had challenges in their upbringing or have been abused, a lot of that abuse happens at night and in the dark. So the dark can trigger a lot of experiences for people that people really want to keep hidden. But for me, you know, I have the possibility hub. You know, I run fire walks. I'm a fire dragon, so I'm fire eating, fire breathing, arrow breaks, board breaks. You know, I'm all about pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
So I wanted to push the boundary. And also it felt the right time. And if I'd done it many years ago, I would have been one of those people sort of twiddling my thumbs. Even, you know, I love to go hiking. But if I go back several years, I would have been, are we nearly there? Can we go back now? You know, that impatience. And I found that really, you know, all spiritual traditions say look within. And most spiritual traditions have some form of cave or darkroom experience. So I wanted to experience it because many different things happen in the dark to you psychologically, in terms of the sensibilities, in terms of sensory deprivation. I don't know whether you've ever been in any of those sensory deprivation tanks, but this is something powerful because there's no difference between your eyes shut or eyes open. When we're talking about dark, there is no smidgen of light. There's no devices. There's no sort of light switches that have a little bit. There's nothing. So it really is going within. And as Carlos Castaneda talks about recapitulation, going back through your life, recapturing your energy. So what attracted me was I'm always looking for something that's been done through the ages, yet is not so often thought about now, that really creates shifts and profound experiences. And I see so many people going on plant medicine experiences, which are great door openers, yet they have this massive high. And then I almost see them going almost bipolar because they have those lows, because there hasn't been the integration, and going up and down, and for another experience, and for another experience, so that plant medicine becomes the next addiction rather than using it as the door opener. Whereas different chemicals are released in the brain in a dark room, and I can speak more about those in a while, that mean, and endogenously, chemicals and things are being released in the brain. And of course, you've got the time to really integrate and be with yourself and look at what's opening up. So for me, it was about opening the door to more possibilities, pushing the boundary of what you can achieve. One, in terms of source feeding, and also two, in terms of being in complete darkness, as I was for 9 nights, 9 days, and I could have gone for longer.
Wow. You know what's when you go through an experience like this, it seems daunting, I'm sure, when you first think about putting yourself in something like this. But I'm sure you found this sort of calmness come over you. And as you said, you're not rushing towards anything, that you could really now enjoy the experience and what the experience was teaching you through this time. I mean, you mentioned before about the dark and how we have a lot of trauma and abuse has happened during the night. And, you know, society really has made the dark seem like a scary, bad thing in every
it's
movie.
Always go for the light, go for the light, go for the light, not seeing the gift of light within the dark.
Well, the conflict is and I think for a lot of people, is that they're not embracing their shadow selves, and that is the darkness that we actually all encompass. And this is so important to actually highlight. You know, you have the presidencies and you have all these people, politicians especially, you know, a lot of the time they put it together, their book, and it's all how wonderful and, you know, this and how I made these decisions and whatever it might be. It's very rare that you find anybody putting out there really their darkest shames and the parts of themselves that they are just too scared to go towards. I'm putting my book together and I'm putting all of my dark side out there and the shames and everything, because
it's not all love and light.
No.
You know, whether you've had a good childhood or not, it's certainly not all love and light.
And we need to be able to know, and it's and have be beautiful to have a society that actually embraces that, and rather than judge and crucify anybody who steps forward and said, I made a mistake, or, you know,
applaud it.
Yeah, applaud it and wear your shame as like a badge of honor. And I'd love to change the paradigm of how we see that, because we all carry shame of some degree or another. And it's usually been passed down to us when we're a child in some way, form or another.
Actually, abandonment is a big issue for many people, because in most societies, when children are born, the umbilical cord is cut too soon. There's blood still in it. And so that creates distress for the baby, and that creates a long-lasting pattern for most people of abandonment. It's one of the key ones that virtually everyone has. And look how that plays out in relationships.
100%. You know what? That's fundamentally very true. We actually had Katya, who you know very well, Bastani, who was a rebirth on the podcast before, and rebirthing is about going back to that trauma of being just coming into the world, that we all share this trauma of being born, umbilical cord being cut off. And we talked about where, you know, in the Jewish tradition, circumcision, of how traumatic that can be for a baby. And I had my own issues around that area growing up because of the pain and abandonment, all of these things, you know. But hey, they think, you know, the memory doesn't start until you're 3 years old and so forth and so forth. But all of these, you know, the body always keeps a score at the end of the day. And there's a beautiful book called that I highly recommend. And when your body remembers it and your mind doesn't, you can be really caught in a place of really a confusing state where you're not sure why you're doing what you're doing. But the body is so triggered and it controls you. It takes you towards whatever it is you need, a release, or towards something that you know is harmful, but you can't stop yourself, because the body is, the subconscious mind and the body are working together in unison, and the conscious mind going, stop this, I know this is not good, but you can't seem to stop yourself. And I've been in those situations, and it's because I remember reading this, that when we're in a traumatic experience as a child, our ego will take us away, whatever's maybe happening at that time, and whatever the act is, the mind's gone, but the body remembers.
Create different personalities.
Yes, and then we come back and we
disorder.
don't remember. It doesn't matter who we're talking to come to that place, and that's why breathing can be so important to uncovering this, as well as maybe going to a dark room, because that can scare a lot of people because they don't know what's in the dark within themselves, as you said, because that is their fear that they're projecting onto a blank screen. And I mean, that is frightening. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can resonate and don't have their light off. And it took me a while myself to make sure I did, you know, I could sleep in a dark room. But again, plant medicines, you know, when used correctly, not once,
they're
each day
beautiful door
is
openers.
absolutely, because it can help you go to a realm that you've not been to before and uncover something that you just couldn't see. And I think every modality is special in its own beautiful way. And because we have so much stuff underneath, right, that you're still seeking, that you're going to dark rooms, and who knows where you might be ending up next, which is so beautiful. And I'm sure we'll have another conversation depending on where you're taken next. But what can you tell us a bit more about the experience in the dark room and anything else you'd like to share?
Okay, well, first of all, the darkroom experience isn't new if you look back through all the cultures and tribes. And even most tribes, when they're running ceremony, it's always when the sun goes down. They believe that there's, that's when they can best connect with their ancestors. But you go back and you've got, in Rome, you've got the catacombs. In Europe, you've got the tunnels. The Essenes had the caves, in the Dead Sea. The Qigong masters, and in that way, they have the immortal mountain. So I actually went to Thailand, and I am looking at creating darkroom spaces here in the UAE and other parts of the world as well, so that I can take people through this amazing experience. But Mantak Chia purpose-built his place because he said when he went to visit all the kind of sacred caves, they were a little bit dirty, noisy. They didn't lend themselves to the silence, solitude, and stillness, the stasis that you also want to encourage in that experience. So I was very well prepared in terms of going because, as I mentioned, it was also a source feeding experience. And so it was just water or dry fasting, and you could have juice if you want. Whereas when Mantak Chia runs the darkroom, they have food in their darkroom. It's a different experience. So we were also source feeding, which accelerates the processes that go on inside. So it's a beautiful space. It's a central area, and the rooms are all around the side. So we had about 3 hours to find your way around, basically, to know where you put things, how to get to the bathroom, which tap turns on the hot water and cold, to lay your clothes out, because, I guess you could be smelly and, stinky every day, but, there's no excuse really. and literally to sort of see how many steps here, how many steps there. And then at 11 p.m., the lights went out. Now, as I mentioned, there's different stages that you go through, because different things happen endogenously, internally, in terms of pineal, pituitary, the thyroid and the thalamus, and hypothalamus go on. So the first few days, you're going to sleep a lot because massive amounts of melatonin are released. And melatonin, I always say Mel puts you to bed, serotonin, Sarah wakes you up. Nice way to remember it. But you get massive amounts of melatonin. So it kind of signals to the body to sleep. And of course, within that sleep, a lot of healing can take place as well. As I mentioned, I was very well prepared. So when I did my blood test on arrival, I had no parasites, no toxins, no heavy metals. And if you still have got parasites in your body, they're going to irritate you if you're fasting and cause you problems. So I'd really taken on board preparing myself, but I probably over-prepared in terms of I felt very weak the first couple of days. So on the fourth day, I did take a little sip of juice. And to feel my body spring into life was wonderful. Mindfulness takes on a whole new meaning because even on my yoga mat, what I would normally do in my yoga practice, I'd do maybe a quarter of it, but I'd rest in between each posture for long periods of time. And I was also surprised that I didn't feel bored. Now, we weren't sort of locked and encased in a room. 3 times a day, a gong would go and we'd have maybe a lecture and meditation. We could ask questions, all in the dark. We had sacred music playing at certain times of the day, not all, because again, if you take in your own iPod, that emits light, so all devices were taken. And then in the evening, there'd be another meditation. So at the first part of the sort of 9 days, 9 nights, there was a few things happening in the day, but in between, it was silence, stillness, and stasis. So first stage is melatonin.
Yeah.
Second stage, you get something called pinoline released. And pinoline, is what starts activating, it's released in the womb. It's what starts activating lucid dreaming. It can come about through near-death experiences and things like that. So you'll find that you start to dream a little bit more. People often ask me, did I see anything? Usually eyes open, eyes closed, it's the same. But what I did find was that it was like I was in a cave. I could see rock and pebbles. And rock is kind of like the first element or the first elementals. Crystals come from rock. And we are made of the elementals. Our physical form is made of the elementals in the first form of consciousness. So to me, I felt that I was in the very cave of creation. And this is also at the pinoline stage, day usually 3 to 6, when, as I said, lucid dreaming, but you may see things or hear things. And I'd often hear music when music wasn't being played. I'd hear sounds. It was like there was a very faint music being played all the time. So that was interesting.
So you have your own soundtrack to your life, and you just started to find out what it was.
Well, in some ways, yes, but I found myself doing something that Carlos Castaneda talks about in all his books. Carlos Castaneda was an anthropologist in the 60s who came across a Mexican shaman called Don Juan Matus. And it was Don Juan who told him about recapitulation, because they believe that every person, every experience in your life you've given away some of your energy and you've taken on board other people's energy. So that as you grow older and have more life experiences, you're running on empty in terms of your own energy. So recapitulation is to go through your life and reclaim back your energy from those experiences and those people, to reclaim it back. So I found myself doing this naturally. Now, Alex, what was so incredible was that even at day 8 or 9, I'd find people would come into my awareness that at a certain time had played a really, really important part in my life. And yet I just thought, it's day 8. And I've never thought of these people. They haven't come into my conscious awareness. And, there's a lot of forgiveness to be done, self and others. And going back to what I said, acknowledging who you were at that stage in your life, and that maybe at that stage you said things or did things that weren't very nice.
We all have, of course.
We all have those. And so I found that was a constant throughout this whole experience, and very powerful in terms of really defragging the mind and clearing all the clutter that we have. Now, after the pinoline stage, as you stay longer in the dark, the next stage is 5-MeO DMT. And when people hear DMT, if they've done plant medicine, they know.
The toad.
Yes, and they also, at deeper levels, the dimethylene or dimethyltryptamine DMT gets released in psychoactive doses. So this is also with 5-MeO DMT and full DMT, which is a little bit later down the line, is when you can see lights. And honestly, at times, I thought there was a disco ball in my room or in the main room. It was like there were strobe lights going on, and I'd open my eyes and there was nothing. There was nothing. And going back, when I say pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. So do you learn to get around the room? Yes, find your way. Do you bump into people literally? Yes. The longer you stay, more things get activated. So longer down the line, you'll be able to see ultraviolet and ultra-red light in terms of seeing the heat emanate off people or the energy fields. But that's if you stay longer. And honestly, I could have stayed longer. I didn't get bored. I thought I would. And towards the end, we had no group meditations in the central room. You could lie there if you wanted. No music, nothing. Because the whole thing is silence, stillness, and stasis. But to get to that point where you're okay and looking within. So I didn't feel bored. Looking back, I would have. The most powerful experience for me and profound was coming out of the dark. And I just didn't expect that. We've got curtains, blackouts, doors, like a whole corridor to go through. And I noticed as I came out, I could start to feel all these emotions come up. And when people have asked me, was it sadness? Was it joy? Was it excitement? Because I was excited about initially going into the darkroom experience. I wasn't nervous, I was excited. But coming out, I felt all these emotions come up, and I saw everybody going to the left, and I thought, I think I'm going to the right because I need to cry. So when you talk about a rebirth and a profound experience, wow, that was my profound experience. And there were many other points within the experience, but the coming out, the recapitulation, just bathing in that stillness, silence, solitude is something so powerful that we so rarely get when we're so attracted through and taking in so much through our senses.
So much stimulation.
So much stimulation. To have that switched off, you have no choice.
To look within.
And to look within.
You know what the beautiful thing is? I mean, of course, this kind of experience has really connected you back to being in the womb, you know? And to be in a protective environment where it's dark, where your senses, your eyes are closed, you know, you have things going on in your ears, and you may hear some echoes of things, but you're in this embryotic state where you feel secure and safe and loved. And to come to a place when you realize that that's still all there. It's still all there within you. And the thing about the stimulation and simulation that's happening outside of ourselves that we forget. And that's how society, I feel like it's sometimes built on, is that we are needing to forget so that we look outside of ourselves to get what we need in order to feel what we already have within us. But because we're so distracted to look within, that we then spend the money, are chasing the carrot, are doing this, are doing that, for all of these experiences.
We're hungry, Alex. We're hungry. Physically,
I think starving
mentally,
and this type,
and emotionally,
for sure.
We're hungry. And so are we using food to satisfy our hunger? Are we using certain emotional patterns to satisfy our hunger? Are we using certain mental patterns? You know, one of the things that I did recognize, one of my hungers was it was a mental hunger. And many people have this, is a kind of need to know before you go. You know, what next? What next? What next? What am I meant to be doing? What's my next purpose? What my next? You know, and having been a person very driven and goal-orientated and things like that, and over the years to have kind of relaxed and sort of see what I attract into my field and you know, notice what is attracted into my field and when I get triggered, because when I get triggered, it's like, oh, something there to learn. But these hungers are also something to question. Are you really hungry? And what are you reaching for in terms of emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually? And spiritual hunger there as well.
Yeah. What are you distracting yourself from?
It is the
going
distraction
within again?
and looking outside to satisfy that hunger. Imagine having all those hungers satisfied, that when you do choose to eat or have a juice, it's juicier, it's more nourishing. When you have a conversation as we're having, it's really satisfying. It nourishes you. When you read that book or see that movie, it feeds you and nourishes you in a different way. And isn't that what life is about? And I know that's what 100%. You're about.
Well, we're kind of coming from a place of scarcity, right?
Yes.
And not enough. And I think that's innately in every single one of us. And I think we're battling that also, the feeling of desire. I mean, I remember Sadhguru was talking about desire and how everything innately in nature is desire-driven. Even the nucleus and the cell itself has a desire as it goes around, like the universe has a... So we're all battling this desire, because if we have a desire, that means we have lack, because we're wanting something. So we're always battling this.
Although, isn't there that, going back to that spiritual desire to evolve, that innate...
Again, it's desire, though.
It's a desire, but it's a seed, almost like the seed of creation, has the desire to be at one-ment with Source, to find that true home, to find that true connection.
And when you find that true connection and you find that home, if we ever find
there's no hunger.
Is and there's no hunger, there's no need, there's no anything, and we can be standing on top of a mountain and obviously meditating, just not needing for anything, if that's why they're there. Or can we do it? I mean, really, how do we do it right now where we are in society, that we can be in that place of not being so hungry? Because, we are on this planet and we are using the resources at a very fast rate, and we're starting to see the damages of, is it the climate change? I'm sure that the pollution that we're creating is having an effect on the planet, and obviously people can be using that as some agenda for some purpose,
yes,
and
we
whatever.
can go in different directions.
But you have to look at it, the state of the world, and go, well, let's use our common sense, we are certainly abusing the planet. The Earth is a living organism, and
yes,
how we're treating it.
As above, so below.
Yeah, and we're treating it in a way that is, it is abuse on a day-to-day basis. And, and a lot of us are aware and conscious and want to minimize our impact. But at the end of the day, by being alive, we're going to need to use the resources on planet Earth. And it is about working in unison and being sustainable. And, I think we're evolving there, and entrepreneurs are stepping in, if not the government and politicians, because, it's a different level. It's 3D consciousness, where their power and
this is being sovereign and remembering who you really are.
Yeah.
Again, going back to questioning reality, questioning the agendas that are being pushed out, and saying,
yeah,
really?
Yeah, I mean, a lot more people are jumping onto the conspiracy theory train, right? Because it's just, you can't ignore what's happening out there. I mean, look, everything is energy, and you can feel it yourself. I mean,
and energy is consciousness. Therefore, energy is aware of itself. And this comes back to, if we're energy, and when we transition, then energy is transitioning. And energy is conscious, then we are taking on a different form of consciousness.
And
so this is where science and spirituality need to come together and understand the consciousness is not in the brain.
Yes. And you know what? At the end of the day, what is consciousness? Consciousness is also truth. Truth is coming up to the light. And, we can try to push things down and not let the truth come out, and everybody's doing their best and they're not taking responsibility of their past actions. And, especially you see it within the whole COVID and how they've handled things.
Look, we do have free will choice.
We do.
And that has also been part of our downfall, and also what's hindered our DNA, because it's created, times when we've gone against universal laws, because we were, endowed with free will.
Yeah, well, so thankfully we do have free will. Well, I talked about this before as well, do we really have free will? Depending on what we look at as free will, because one, we may not have free will within ourselves if we're conditioned and we're still living within our condition, right?
Yeah,
and we're still
taught,
limited.
What's in the media.
Yeah. So are we really, do we have free will, or are we just making decisions that we've been programmed within our subconscious by all the stuff we're looking at, reading and everything else? And people like you and me, and I know many others who, once we step out of the kind of that corporate world or the 3D structure of how things are, and I was very deeply in it myself, and the more we step out, thankfully I turned and quit my job and became an actor in my 20s, and that was
you've done so many different things,
that was
Alex.
my
I
start.
love hearing about all the different things that
and
you've
I just
done.
went on this journey and take the mask off, and I was living on couches, but I felt free more than I ever had, because I wasn't working to keep a place to do this and this. But it was tough, but it was certainly a spiritual awakening, because I was able to have a different perspective. I was looking at other people, from the outside. Even as an actor, then it obviously evolved into self-development and then everything else. But when we come from that place, I mean, it's very tough when you see the people you love, or you just see generally society, if you look at the news, or that's what it highlights, that people are still asleep, and they still really believe that the authority figures out there. Not in every country. I mean, I really love the UAE and Dubai, and a lot of what they do seems to me that they have a higher consciousness and they're very diplomatic in how they're handling the situations. And I feel like they're evolving country. They obviously have their flaws, like any place does, but where they're moving towards, I feel like we resonate with their energy, and it's very hard to think where else to go based on what we've seen and how they've been handling, these crises. Because of that, actually, is this why? What brought you? But I'm sure we'll edit that one out or not. Who cares? What brought you here to Dubai?
Oh.
Do you resonate what I'm saying about Dubai and what it gives you?
Yes, I think we're very blessed being here, and people who love it, hate it, are here just for a short space of time to get what they can. They're in that kind of like little loop.
Yeah.
I came here a long time ago, over 30 years ago. When
That's incredible.
I guess Dubai, I came to Sharjah, I'd never heard of it. And I thought, well, if I don't like it, I can go home. I'd traveled already quite a lot all around Europe, and a very intense relationship sort of was over. And I thought, it's time to reinvent myself.
Wow.
This is where people get into the loop because they expect society to do something for them rather than with them. And so I could have gone anywhere in the world. This was the days before internet. So it was speaking to people who lived overseas. It was going for auditions. It was going for interviews. And I got a role at the Marbella Club in Sharjah. And I looked it up on the map and thought, well, if I don't like it, I can go home. Arrived in July, hit by the heat. But of course, Dubai, Sharjah was, and UAE was very different back then, very, very different. It was more a village. And then it became a town, then it became a city, and there became a time when, everybody had heard of the UAE and that it wasn't a black mark on your CV. And I also had the chance to do so many different things. I was on the radio for many, many years with the Fitness Factory. There were pantomimes. I was part of a dance troupe.
That's so cool.
I did, I had the opportunity to do so many different things in corporate, out of corporate. And then I moved into the field of learning and development and training, and then running the NLP certification programs. And, that fits in with my desire always to evolve and grow. And always
to contribute and share.
And to contribute and share. And I think most people want to feel purposeful rather than purposeless. And I'm always reminded of one of my favorite quotes is, I've got a couple, but one is David Lynch, the producer. And he's heavily involved in the transcendental meditation movement. And he always says, if you have golf ball size thinking, then when you read the book, you have golf ball size understanding. When you wake up in the morning, golf ball size wakefulness, and sort of a golf ball size experience of life. But if you could expand that golf ball maybe to the size of a beach ball or a bowling ball or a football, then when you read the book, more understanding. When you wake in the morning, more wakefulness, more awareness, an expanded consciousness. Life becomes richer. And so I look at where we live now in the UAE and see its evolution and the opportunities that it offers so many, many different people in a small, condensed area. There's so much happening, Alex. We're very blessed.
We were shocked when we first came here. We thought, look, it's Dubai, it's all superficial, Burj Khalifa, it's a big flashing light, but like anywhere, there's always the other side.
There's the heart and soul,
and there really is.
the desert,
and when we first
hiking.
came here, we saw you and met the community, and we really felt this home, and it's really expanded our consciousness with the many different modalities you guys, have to offer here, which has been absolutely incredibly awakening for us. Even your WhatsApp Route Awakening Travelers says it all, and it really helped us transition to connect with Dubai because it's like a vortex. I see it as a spaceship. It's really, if you don't hold on, you can fly off. And we've seen people come and go. We had our partners initially in the business, and they came here, and it didn't take long to speed up what it is that's within yourself. And you say about the darkroom that, what comes out from the inside, we're scared of.
Your nervous system becomes aware of itself. It's a different level of awareness. And look, I'm still integrating.
Yeah. Well, it's really sped up the karmic cycle. And I noticed, we said it ourselves before, whatever was going on inside, it's a medicine. Coming to Dubai feels like a medicine. It's going that fast.
And look, it's not all pretty.
No.
You've had the good, the bad, the ugly.
We had baptism of fire when we first came to Dubai. We saw things.
Some terrible experiences here.
Probably some of the toughest ones.
Yes.
But when you're not afraid of growth and you take full responsibility for everything and anything that comes your way, then you can only grow from it. You can only have enriching experiences from it. If you're from a victim mindset, coming to Dubai is horrifying. Coming to Dubai will challenge you, and you got to be willing to kind of go on this ride and go, I'm going to hold on, even if it's trying to knock me off like a horse bronco, and it did this at the first time. Did it mean it didn't like us? No, it meant that, how strong is your will? How really committed are you to growth and expansion?
That linking, we always say as above, so below, but doesn't that also link to the chaos that comes when you're aligning with a new frequency? So in one of my keynotes, Unlocking the Genius Within, I often show a very, very short clip around cymatics, which gives such a lovely example of how frequency impacts energy and matter. So there's a kind of like tray, a metal tray, and they put sand or salt on it, and then they key in a frequency. And the sand and salt goes into chaos before it aligns with that new frequency. And then they switch the frequency up, and again, the sand goes into chaos, and then it aligns in the most beautiful geomancies with the new frequency. And so if you think about when you first came here, and the chaos and crises and things, almost it's aligning with a frequency. And when you go anywhere new or a new experience in the world, you have to kind of like find your way around, like, in the dark, finding your way around. As I said, you literally bump into people, but you do find your way across the other side of the room. There's times also, and this again is a lovely metaphor, where you find yourself totally disorientated. It's like, I don't know which way I'm facing. I don't know where I am. I thought the chair was here, and I've no idea where I am. And you have to recalibrate. You have to stay still and literally go within and recalibrate to find out which direction you're facing. And I remember once where I sort of bumped into something that I thought was something else, and I thought, I didn't think that was there. And I literally took some steps backward, took another step to the left, and thought, okay, here we go again. And lo and behold, I found my room.
If you don't panic, you'll find your room. And I think...
But most of us go into that chaos, not realizing that when I always say it's chaos or crisis that creates evolution. Just look back to some of the worst times in your life. Didn't they create a shift? Because you have to let go of everything.
100%.
And then you find you operate, whether it's an illness, dis-ease, financial crash, something shifts and changes, and your energy moves to a whole new level.
And 100%, the another word is perturbation. When we're under a certain amount of pressure, and they talk about it, if the tree falls...
What's that word?
Perturbation.
Never heard that. Love it.
Well, let's, I'll share.
We'll perturbate.
Let's perturbate together. Basically, if a tree falls in the forest, it just sort of drops and rots, right?
Yes.
But if it falls in the lake and it sinks to the bottom of a swamp or whatever you call it, and it goes to the bottom and the pressure on top, it turns it into coal, and over time it can turn it into a diamond. The similar process goes for us as human beings, that when we're put into a crisis situation, where that Julie and I went under, we were under so much pressure. And when you're under pressure, there's a certain reaction from most people that our emotions flare up and our patterns and all of our conditioning comes up to the surface because we're stressed.
Oil floats to the surface.
And because we're stressed, you either go on with your emotions and the stress and break down and have to go, or you cope in the best way you can. And because Julia and I have done so much self-development and we're still on our growth, and we would go towards where the plant medicines were to understand what was going on, all the breath work, even me institutionalizing myself at the Hoffman to deal with what immense amount of pressure that we were going under. And Julia and I, myself, when we came here, we were dealing with something that was very unique. So many things were happening at the same time, including coming here and finding out somebody who wasn't who they said they were, and having to take them to court because of theft of a lot of money. And we had to find out the Dubai court systems very quickly, and the lawyers, as well as many other things that, I want to share in this book, because it is a movie and it's been unraveling like a movie since coming to Dubai. And because of that, because of understanding that there is this perturbation and the pressure, I understood that going through these trials and tribulations, that we were becoming a diamond. And what is the manifestation of that in our life is the New Earth Cafe. We have the self-love concept, because we need an outlet to put it into towards something.
So it opened the door to new possibilities that wouldn't have been there years ago, and led the path to when the time was right.
Exactly. And that was so thankful for me. It could have easily been a victim mindset. Could have easily have gone in that direction and left Dubai and, tails between our legs and see you later. But we're just fighters, and we have this.
And that's the gift in the darkness and the light in the darkness.
And that is a dark place.
Yes, because most people want to run away and escape. That's our natural human tendency. If something feels bad, run away.
Well, they go to the escape rooms if you want that.
Yeah, yes. But again, in the dark, you have to face yourself, and it's not always pretty. It's not always pretty. There's, tears, there's regret, there's shame, and it's also acknowledging who you are. And that, isn't that when I sort of meet with clients, the gift to be able to help them be more of who they truly are and less of who they're not. Because most of us are, spend time pretending to be what other people want us to be. And then we're so far down the rabbit hole, we can't get back to discover who we really are, the magnificence, the brilliance, the diamond that we are.
The diamond in the rough.
Absolutely.
I 100% agree. And that's where I was. I didn't actually know who I was. And I remember my ex in my, I think, late 20s would even ask me the question like, who are you? In such a way that made me really go, my gosh, she knows I'm an imposter in my own self.
Yes.
Okay, what does this mean? I started having this existential crisis, and it was a dark place. And then I've been, searching ever since. But thankfully, coming to a place and meeting Julia, my wife, actually wanted to share just this little story, because you mentioned it in the dark, where you had these thoughts about these people you hadn't thought about before, and you claimed your energy back. Well, my wife and I, last year we were in London. I just came out of the Hoffman, and we were getting acquainted and integrating everything from our experience, and a little help with a bit of medicine, as one does. We really started to connect to some energies, and we decided to claim all our energy back. And she had some energy with an ex-partner of hers that they had a really great, love interest, right? Because he was an older guy, and it was something there. This
wasn't the piece of paper that went in my fridge freezer.
No, that's the court.
That's another story.
That's the court's situation. I think I should just put that in the book recently. But because of her energy being somewhere else, it wasn't with us. But because I managed to share my shames and truths to Julia in this situation, something arose in me. And I meditate and I do what I do, but I never really explored Kundalini energy. I'm not that kind of, something about that makes me feel like I'm being cheesy. You know what I mean?
There's many different pathways, thank goodness.
But you know what? I was sitting there and I felt the serpent rise. And when we were talking and we were dealing with this, we're integrating and talking about energy and claiming it back, I was suddenly moving. Like my Kundalinis had all been, were all just alive. And I was like, and I was judging it for a moment going, it's a snake, is that bad? Is this, and I realized this is Kundalini, this is it can be dangerous if you're trying to force something, because you can kill yourself if you're forcing this kind of energy.
Totally. People, many experiences of Kundalini awakening and people not being ready and ending up in institutes, in hospital, and all sorts of things.
So this, thankfully, I wasn't trying to force anything. This just became something natural, and we must have been claiming some energy back. Like you said, it was pretty trippy because this guy that she had that relation was very much in that sexual energy, and suddenly I was claiming it and I was feeling it and I was experiencing going, wow, something's activated within me because of trauma I had before. I was hiding myself still, even with my wife, and sharing it all was such an liberation. It was an enlightening experience.
Yeah, kudos
I felt
for you for
enlightened.
And how liberating.
Because I had it hidden for so long that, and I could have risked everything sharing it. And it's going to be in the book because it was a deep, shameful experiences that I had, but actually weren't that bad. But because I was always so tough on myself, it felt like it was the worst thing in the world, right? Because of how I had been to myself, and that's why it kept leading me to these situations in my past, because I was stressed because of how I was handling myself. And something I came out of Hoffman with the word was tenderness. Alex, be tender with yourself. And I was like, wow, that's the word they gave me, right? So going back to claiming back this energy, what was really odd, once this energy came back between us, that guy messaged in a group going, I've lost my phone. I lost all my contacts. It was like, he suddenly was just like, I'm lost. Where is everybody? Like there and then. Within a week, we had a message from mutual friends, because I never met the guy, but Julia obviously knew that he was in hospital and that he just had, I think, a heart attack or something happened. And he was going to go for an emergency operation. And then within that week, he died. And we were just so like, what happened? Just by claiming our energy back, something that was still held there, was he living off that energy from the past because she claimed it back? What was he then living off? The prana energy of the experience with Julia that now was within us. I mean, you can look at it in so many different ways.
Yes, and it also highlights entanglement.
Yes, entanglement, and that didn't allow us to move. So the idea that, of course, every encounter with any person we've met before, there was an energy exchange. What we left behind, what do they still hold? These are the kind of questions that are certainly worth invoking, because when you do claim your energy back, healed and transformed and multiplied, it's a big statement to put out into the universe, because if you don't, and there's still unhealed energy and there's still resentment, there's still pain, then you can never really feel deserving to receive everything that comes your way from the universe if there's still part of you, defragmented personality, that's still in some chaos or pain that's unhealed, because you're always going to take that into your future. So when you truly come to that place and that realization, and you come back with all your energy healed and there's no more shame, the universe opens up to so many more possibilities for you, because suddenly you're a cleaner vessel of receiving. You're not subconsciously pushing it away because you feel there's some part of you doesn't deserve it.
Intuition wakes up, synchronicities happen beautifully. Life starts to flow in a different way. And, there's always more. The old onion metaphor, we still get triggered. But what a lovely example of the connection and, you speaking your truth and being your truth and having the courage to say, this is who I am.
I got to say it was like a coming to Jesus moment. And it was ironic because we were in a certain battle with these other people. And we're doing it from a spiritual place, to be not in a judgmental, blaming place. Even if it's happening for us, not to us. And it was about them having their coming to Jesus moment. But ironically, it was my coming to Jesus moment, in the sense that the awakening, Christ consciousness stepping in.
Totally. And that again is what happens in the dark room, because you come into connection with yourself, you come into true union, and you can't lie to you because it's you.
Yeah.
And so there really is that kind of like, expansion, but it's such a, I always say some of the most powerful experiences that you ever have are beyond words. And although you've spoken about that, like it felt like the Kundalini awakening, to get that across in words, there's so much more and so much richness to that experience that is beyond the words.
It really, because when you experience something like that, I can't tell a scientist, this happened. Oh, that was because of the conscious and the brain neurons. I'm like, look, you can try to get there with the mind, but you'll never get there with the mind. The new earth, you can only get there through the heart. And really, when you open yourself up to these experiences, Carol, there are things that just, do not fit into the mold of what society deems to be the way life is, but that there is something far beyond our comprehension.
We are magnificent.
Absolutely. And when you really see
beings.
that, I mean, star beings, I'm reading about, Jesus Christ, not on so much in the Bible version, of the clean cuts, should we say, that he was smoking marijuana and he was maybe doing psychedelic mushrooms, and he had the rainbow jacket, and he was really somebody who had a wand. And you start to read these stories going, well, these kind of characters are out there. We're using some of these potential tools that Mother Nature has and that we all have access to. And there is something about these saints and these seraphims and these
well, as I said, those gurus, right, going back to the masters of the Far East, are these phenomena, walking on water, being in two places almost within instantly, are those just for the masters or gurus, or do we have the potential? I believe we do, and I believe our DNA has been severely compromised. I do believe in bioregenesis of the human DNA blueprint. And again, that's one of the reasons that I go on these dark rooms or other experiences, because when you bring your DNA back online, then you can also achieve different levels of consciousness. And there's different ways to do that.
That's beautiful.
That's true biohacking and bioregenesis.
Wow. I mean, I've got a couple of questions that I feel like I want to pick out. And
there's more.
just a couple of questions, because I've got these really cool questions from, I have to throw it out there, from ChatGPT. I thought, I'm going to throw my podcast name and what can be really cool questions. And it pulled out in about 2 seconds, 10 questions.
I must do
I won't
that
go
for
to
my
all
podcast.
10, but I just want to pull out just a couple. So the first one is, what do you think is the true nature of reality, and how has your perspective on this evolved over time?
I believe we've gone from a sort of me, to a more expanded reality of understanding our true, eternal, multidimensional nature and our true path of evolution. So the true nature of reality, are we living in a holographic reality? Absolutely. But we're also part of the collective consciousness. So does that impact our holographic reality? But it also works both ways round, because even as the individual manifest form that you come in has much more impact than we believe in terms of creating shifts and changes. Wow. So yes, I do believe that it's a holographic nature. And then if that's true, then we have the opportunity to shift and be part of that shift.
Beautiful. All right, let me throw another one at you, because you did that so masterfully. How do you navigate the tension between fitting in with society's expectations and staying true to your own values and beliefs?
Gosh, that's taken me a long time to get to the point where, and I feel it is a dance. I prefer to use the word dance rather than journey, which implies a destination. I think we're always dancing in that of wanting appreciation, wanting approval, wanting to fit in. And I must say, I'm more of an introvert these days than I ever was, because I feel very sensitive to other people's energy and what's going on. And, it doesn't suit who I am now. So going back to looking back at former selves or former identities of yourself, where you go, oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, did I really say that? Oh, was I that horrible? Or was I that good? Or whatever. Yeah. And just acknowledging who and where you're at in this moment in time. Because that's all we have, is this now moment. Does the past impact us in the now? Yes. Do our visions of the future impact us of now? But isn't that the gift of getting to the place where you like yourself? And so you're not dependent on what anybody thinks. Getting appreciation and acknowledgement from other people is lovely. It is always nice. And I must say, I've just had a birthday, as you have, last month. And some of the messages, some of the cards that people wrote for me really touched my heart, touched my heart. And I did feel very appreciated. So I don't think that goes, accepting yourself doesn't mean that you don't need appreciation and gratitude and kind words from others, and vice versa, to give them as well. It's just that it's not a hunger. So I spoke of those hungers, to conform.
Yeah.
In fact, Alex, I've always looked not to conform. I've always, when I started with NLP here
I'm right there
20
with you.
years ago, there was only one other person bringing NLP programs. So I've phased out of that quite a bit because as great as it is, there's many other people doing that. Firewalking, there's very few people who run firewalking events here. Darkroom, I will be bringing in darkroom technology here and other parts of the world because I don't see that there's enough real spaces to get people immersed and to also accelerate that journey. So I always look for something that's a little left of center rather than doing what the mainstream does. And I think you do as well.
100%. Well, as others go left, you go right.
Well, I did when I came out of the darkroom. So there's a delicious gift in that, but it also creates a dichotomy because, yes, there's a part of you that wants to be liked, but also there's a part of you that wants to do your own thing. And that means that not everybody is going to like you. And acknowledging that as nice as you may be, as wonderful as you may be, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
You find your tribe.
And there comes a liberation that you shared when you told that story about, being authentic and sharing what had gone on with you, with Julia. And look how your body, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, the energy responded by, that energy moving and shifting in a way that says, yes, yes, yes.
Exactly. To embrace that authenticity, to suddenly know thyself, what a liberation. To really, truly, and now working with Katya, who I did before my breathing, she saw my breathing deviation had changed, that I wasn't so limited in my energy. The whole energy field had changed and shifted.
Yes.
Because I wasn't suppressing anything. Like the amount of energy it takes to push down a cork underwater or a big bucket, whatever it is, every single moment of your
And you don't realize it because you
life,
just get used to it.
You just get used to it. And you're wondering where all your energy is actually going. And you're distracting yourself as much as you possibly can to distract you from the fact you're pushing down this massive bucket, cork, whatever you want to call it, underwater. But when you finally let it, like a bottle of champagne, suddenly the bubbles are flowing, and now the stagnant energy that's hanging from the bottom is able to come out, and space for something new and beautiful is able to come in.
Now you had, like the cork popped.
Yeah.
For many people, it can be more subtle. And that's also fine. And that's where you find that other people resonate with you. Other people notice a shift and change. I shared with you, I had a very powerful experience, not just in the darkroom, but probably about 12 years ago in the heart and lungs of the world, Ecuador, with a very remote tribe. And at the time, I didn't realize how impactful and profound it was going to be, because as a result of that, I went here and met some people and heard something and went there. And I had no idea that was going to lead me in a different trajectory at that time. And so it's only in hindsight I can look back and see what shifted. And so even with the darkroom, I know that I'm still in that integration period, and it's in hindsight that I may look back. Whereas some people, it's like that cork uncorks and it's just like whoosh. You know that you've reclaimed that energy and now you're more of who you are. And it also lets go of the fear of being authentic and saying, this is who I am and I'm not everybody's cup of tea and I'm okay with that.
And that is okay.
And that's not the path that everybody can take. If you're working in a business or an organization, you're expected to conform in a certain way. I don't have those constraints. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I think we both are.
Yes.
And that's what really helps to you to be your authentic, truthful self, is that we have positioned our life to be that way. And when I set out on this path, I really, many years ago, really wanted to make sure I had freedom. I wanted to design my life. I didn't want it to be work and my life around work. It was my life and how do I support my life?
Yes.
And most people are living in the work and then life around work, right? That's how the system's really built. And all you need to do is go, how do I want my life to look like? How do I want to design it? Why can't I have the way I want it? This is questioning
reality.
And it really is to its core.
This is asking the right questions of reality. And the reality, like the holographic nature of reality, you want to perceive. You know, even when I spent a long time not really watching very much TV, probably because I didn't have a proper TV. You know, it was plugged into my computer. So if I wanted to change channels, I had to get up and do it, you know, back in the...
Game over.
Yes. You know, I always had this thing, I'm always very careful what I put into my field. However, I notice when I do watch something, I'm watching from a different level of awareness. And that makes a difference. That, you know, it's not just entertainment, it's edutainment and helping you ask different questions. Because there are some interesting series and programs out there. And I wonder if people are questioning themselves and what they're watching, or just watching it as entertainment. There's a big difference.
100%. If you're immersed into it and you completely just switch off, or are you aware of yourself watching the very thing you're watching and whatever's coming in, questioning
watching yourself.
Are you actually the person watching it, or your higher self is always the one that's guiding or looking over you through every experience? And I've noticed that when I step into that field where the higher self, I'm observing what's going on, I'm less reactive and I'm more responsive, and I'm coming from a higher consciousness. I feel that. I at times can switch off.
The golf ball is much bigger.
Exactly.
More wakefulness, more consciousness.
It feels limitless,
awareness.
you know. It feels limitless. And it's a beautiful place to be and to keep practicing this. And the more authentic you are, the more really, you know, we can say, what does really authenticity really mean? It means less of the condition, less of the lies and judgments we've been telling ourselves that we are based on our past experiences. And if
we're hard on ourselves
we're
too.
So hard on ourselves. And if we are not that anymore, then we're just a space for our higher self to step in, which is our spirit, our intergalactic self,
multidimensionality, the soul, the oversoul, the avatar, the rishi, all of who we are.
Yes.
All the different probabilities that are happening in different time-space realities at a different angular rotational spin.
We're creative beings. Yes. We're not self. We're not just a computer running old programs anymore, or programs that patterns that we've known before. We are actually waking up each day to a blank canvas, and we can create anything we want. Most people are not living that way, and our past represents our future, and that's the work that we're doing, right? Just
but that's the old story, Alex. You know, and this is where, you know, I remember in sort of our NLP master practitioner programs, the last part of it was breakthrough, which happened over a number of days, and people would have to do a detailed personal history. And sometimes their master prac would come up to me and say, Carol, I can't work with this person. Have you read their story? And I said, it's a story. Mm-hmm. Some people have drama. Some people have a thriller. Some people it's a horror story. If you view it as a story, then it can be changed. And sadly, most people want to bring the story and drag it into their now moment.
Oh, I've done that relentlessly.
You know, change the story. Change the story, you know, write your story, then do it as she did, you know, third person, and that she had a brother, you know, and then it becomes a story, and it changes your perception, and you can rewrite that story. It doesn't have to be that way. You know, to see the liberation when people can have written that story, and then at the end of breakthrough, they rip it all up, and that's not me. You know, I'm creating a new story for my life. How liberating, how wonderful. That's reclaiming energy.
You know what? 100%. I mean, look, in the book I'm writing, it's even to go as far as, you know what? I don't need to put it in the fire. I want to write it and go, that was a story that I used to believe in. And these events happened. And I used to make it mean something. I couldn't even tell it to myself, but now I'm writing it. That's how far I've evolved to know that it's not who I am.
And remember, you can't prove anything outside of you, because our entire reality is experienced through our nervous system and our five senses. So you can't actually, you know, if shit happened when you were 2 years old, you can't go back to be 2 years old. But what you're doing is representing it in the now to ensure that you carry on feeling bad.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
To protect ourselves from ever having that again by bringing it back into our consciousness and think, well, if I remember it, then I'll stop doing it. But funny enough, you attract what you are, and these situations keep occurring. That's why we want to help people get off this by questioning your reality. There's no need not to question your reality. One last question for the road.
I'm glad we're not going through all 10, but these are good questions
I
for
know.
ChatGPT. Really
it's
good.
It's a cool tool. What insights or lessons have you gained from your own experiences of challenging or transformative moments in your life?
I've learnt that we are more than we think we are, that there is always more, that we place ourselves and others place us in boundary conditions. And it's like your glass of water. The water is contained within the glass. Mm-hmm. When you remove the glass, the water goes everywhere and you can never get it back into the glass. And it goes back to sort of one of my favorite quotes. The path to mastery means the letting go of everything that's holding you back, and, challenging, asking those questions. So my biggest lessons have been being grateful that I had that desire and still have that desire to learn, evolve, grow, and discover more of who I am, to share with others, and to keep being the best that I can be. So each step, each time I've learned, I remember going through my NLP training and then running the first practitioner and fast master practitioner program. I mean, they're 7-day and 12-day programs. That's a lot to hold in your mind. I remember when I was first in learning and development, running a first training program, you want to do your best. And I really put in, as Malcolm Gladwell would say, the time and hours, do what you do best and do it well.
10,000 hours, outliers,
something
right?
like that. When people sort of see you on stage and think, oh, you just rolled out of bed and delivered that. No, there's a lot of hours behind that went to the time that I could roll out of bed and just deliver just like that. So what have I learnt? There's always more. And that for me, it's to be that role model and push the boundaries of what I'm capable of, and then share it, to teach it, to share it with other people. So, that I must admit, Alex, some of those experiences I've gone to, I'm recalling when I first went to the firewalking training. I took a plane, a bus, a train, another truck, and we were in the middle of nowhere. And then we get this in-your-face waiver form. And I thought, I'm not signing that. I wanted to run away. And then another thing that challenged me there that's quite amusing, there were a lot of German people on that program because it's on the Swiss-French border. And they decided that the sweat lodge would be naked. And It was a very small sweat lodge. And being British...
It wasn't in the dark, was it?
Well, it is in the dark when you're in the sweat room, but, you can't move your hand anywhere. You don't know what you're going to touch. And being British to the core, I decided I would wear a bikini and a sarong.
So I'm right there with you.
That's, beating your own drum and doing what's right for you.
You know what? Exactly. That's already out your comfort zone as it is, but you had your own self-preservation that you wanted to take care of. No, fair enough.
Yeah, I've learned not to be quite so serious, because in those things, it's like when I used to teach yoga, most of the time you've got people with their backsides up in the air, so things are going to happen. So making
especially
it a joyful, and in the dark, so a joyful experience. Well, we weren't eating, so there wasn't very much of that.
Okay, that's so beautiful. We should leave people with that final thought of the naked sauna room and release. So beautiful. So, guys, thank you so much for checking this out, and I hope you really enjoy the podcast. Carol, is there a way that people can find you and if they want to interact with you?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, I'm researching spaces for Darkroom and proper facility in place to take people through this magnificent experience. They can also visit thepossibilityhub.com, which has all the links to different things that I do, Mind Hub, Spirit Hub, Learning Hub. And they can email me at carol@caroltalbot.me. Thank you.
Beautiful. And guys, you know what? If there's any questions, there's any comments, we'd just love to hear from you because, hey, who knows, we might bring up our guest again very soon.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.